Welcome to the SHSMD End of Year Keynote Webinar, a conversation with Bozoma St. John. This webinar is being recorded and is broadcast in listen-only mode. Please take a moment to ensure your device volume is turned up and a speaker icon at the top of your screen is green. At any point during this webinar, you're invited to type your questions into the Q&A pod located on the right-hand side of your screen. Thanks to all those that submitted questions via the survey link. At this time, I would like to welcome current SHSMD Board President and Chief Communications and Marketing Officer at Michigan Medicine, Rose Glenn, to introduce today's speakers.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining this special keynote webinar. It is with great pleasure that I introduce our presenters for today. Moderating our dialogue is Bill Klaproth. Bill is the Director of Marketing and a pod talk host for DoctorPodcasting. He is a former radio program director, having worked at various radio stations across the Midwest. You may also recognize him and his voice as host of the SHSMD podcast, Rapid Insights. And now I could not be more excited to welcome our keynote speaker, Bozoma St. John. Currently, Boz serves as Chief Marketing Officer for 160over90. Formerly Endeavor Global Marketing, a global leader in entertainment, sports, and fashion. In her role, St. John focuses on driving marketing efforts across the growing global network of companies, including 160over90 clients and premium brands. Prior to Endeavor, Boz served as Chief Brand Officer for Uber, where she was tasked with telling the stories of millions of riders and driver partners across 600-plus cities. She has become a trailblazing brand marketing executive and change agent by humanizing some of the most popular brands through a focus on empathy, authenticity, and inclusion. She will show how pop culture's ability to disrupt narratives is a real opportunity for all of us to utilize within our own spaces, including healthcare. At this time, I would like to hand it off to our moderator, Bill, to kick off this exciting end-of-year conversation. Bill, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rose. I appreciate that. And Boz, thank you for your time. It is a pleasure to talk with you. And thanks to all of our attendees today. Hello, attendees. So thank you for being with us. As a brief outline today, we will cover with Boz assessing a brand, empathy and marketing, what would Boz do, insights and lessons that Boz has learned, and then we will get to your questions. So we have created slides that you will see with most of the questions I will be asking Boz. Of course, as we talk, I will most likely have follow-up questions that you won't see on your screen, but we did want to create a visual for you to follow along. So with that being said, Boz, let's get into this. This is so much fun, and thank you again. So when it comes to assessing a brand, I thought this was a good place to start. When you moved to Uber in 2017, you said, "My primary responsibility is to create and navigate the brand of Uber externally." So it's really about assessing what the brand is today and then figuring out a way to connect what is emotional and human about the brand to our customer. So maybe we can take this in a couple of parts. First off, how do you assess a brand?
I consider myself to be a marketing and brand nerd, and so I could literally talk about this all day long. However, I think there are, because we have a limited amount of time, I will do my best to answer the question succinctly. Although the first question about how to essentially assess a brand is a very complicated question, because just like in the medical profession, when you are assessing a brand, it is like a human being. I often compare brands to people. We often think of companies as inanimate objects where they really aren't. There are personalities, there are obviously the health of a brand, what people think of that brand in terms of, do they like them? Do they like them not? Do they believe them? Do they believe them not? Do they trust them? All of these things are human qualities. And so when you're assessing a brand, it is very much like a human being. It's about understanding what the brand health is like. Do the consumers and the audience who are interacting with the brand, trust that brand, as I said? Do they think it is a brand worthy of their time? Do they care about what's going to happen to the brand tomorrow if it wasn't around? Would they feel dependent on it? All of these things are the necessary inputs to really understand how a brand is going to behave once you start adjusting it. And so
Right.
again, I would liken it to medicine in that if you are going to prescribe a course of action to rehabilitate a brand, you better make sure that the brand is healthy enough to sustain any of your administrations. Otherwise, it will fail.
Right. We all want healthy brands, that's for sure. So you just said understanding what the brand health is like. So for someone listening going, okay, I get that, but how do I do that? So what are the things you do to understand what the brand health is? How do you know what they're feeling or what they want or how they are behaving?
Yeah, well, there are very technical ways to do that. There are, of course, quantitative and qualitative measures that you can utilize to assess brand health. That can be anything from a focus group to a survey online. It can be a communication with current consumers, advocates, who will tell you the truth about what they think about the brand. It comes from a number of ways, but I am always more apt to assess a brand's health through qualitative measures versus quantitative, because qualitative will allow you to get into the deeper reasons, the whys, the emotional attributes that are causing someone to either like the brand or not. And therefore, you have a better understanding. There's more depth to understanding where the brand is headed and why it is in the shape that it is, outside of, questions that you're going to get a lot of data from, but probably won't get any deeper in understanding the rationale as to why a brand is behaving a certain way.
Right. Well, that makes sense. So that's really good information, focus groups, online surveys, communication with current advocates, and then you said you depend more on the qualitative, getting into the whys and the emotional attributes. So speaking of the emotional attributes, how do you figure out what is emotional and human about a brand? I know you said you describe brands as people. When you finally come up with that picture, what is it that you find out that is human about a brand?
Well, just like you would any other kind of human, what is the personality of the brand? And like I said, do people trust the brand? It's like think of your best friend.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if your best friend was not around tomorrow, how would you feel? Do you rely on your best friend for advice on, where to eat or what music to listen to, or you can use any number of measures, but to me, it's the brand health are the inputs that are more emotional than they are quantitative. So you started with the example of Uber. I laugh all the time about how impatient and how forgetful, our audiences are, right? When Uber first came on the scene, this was about 7 years ago, if you hit your phone, punch the button, and a car showed up 7 minutes later and took you to your destination, and you got out, you didn't have to exchange money or you didn't have to input your credit card, you just got out and went to do what you're doing, everybody was, oh my gosh, this is incredible. What a fantastic opportunity. Today, if you call for an Uber and it says 7 minutes, people want to riot. They're like, my God, why is this taking so long, right? It should be 2 minutes. Now, you could say that from a brand standpoint, the best thing to do would be to figure out how to get it from 2 minutes to 1 minute, from 1 minute to 30 seconds, from 30 seconds to instantaneous rides, right? That could potentially, if you're looking at it just from a straight number standpoint, you would say that is actually what's going to get brand affinity. That's why people would use the brand, etc. But it is not. The speed at which a car is going to come to you, or the algorithm that allows a driver and a passenger to be connected, is not what makes people rely on Uber. It is, can I get from point A to point B safely? And when the brands start to take a hit, not just from a corporate standpoint, but, allegations of sexual misconduct from drivers or, safety of inebriated, customers, etc., that's when the brands start to have a problem. It's like, do I feel safe in the car? It's not about whether or not the car is coming in 7 minutes, but do I feel safe? That's an emotional trigger. And it is the same as any human being. Do I trust this person to get me from this point to this point?
Right. So point A to point B, will I get there safely? Safely is that emotional attribute you were talking about. Yeah. So that's a great segue into number 2, which is empathy in marketing. So why are we lacking in empathy in our marketing, really understanding how our potential consumer feels? Why are we lacking in that?
Yeah. I mean, it comes down to a number of issues. I think as business people, we're always trying to find ways to essentially make our brands more effective and efficient, right? We're looking at our P&Ls and we're trying to figure out, again, how to make sure that if I have a promotion up or I have a sale up or I'm trying to, gather business from my competitor to get into my business, we're always trying to find the cost-cutting ways to get that done, right? The most efficient ways. Empathy is something that we always forget, that someone would rather come to you or use your product because they like it better, not because it works better, not because it is the best, ingredient or the, cleanest waiting room or any of those things. They will simply do it because they feel good when they are there. And empathy then requires us to break down all of the scientific reasons why, one customer will go from one place to another and start thinking, yes, as human beings. It's like why I joke with my teams all the time. I'm like, make it a focus group of 1. Think about yourself. If you can connect to the product or service in a way that makes you feel really good. So use empathy. Why would a single mother who has limited resources, why would she want to, and limited time, why would she want to invest her time or her money in this particular product over that one? When you have your answer, then you understand how to best attract her. It is not necessarily just about the efficacy of the product at the end of the day.
Okay. How do we weave that empathetic message into our brand? How can we be more empathetic in our brands?
Well, I think, first of all, we have to be more empathetic. We as people have to be more empathetic. I also find that oftentimes as executives and as business people, we rarely include our own personal stories, into our decision making. Somehow we think that being, all things to all people is what is going to win the day. And that's not true. We find that there are many connection points that even though you and I come from different backgrounds, we're, different culturally, maybe different religions, all those things, there is going to be some point of connectivity between the two of us. And so if you as the business person are bringing your full self, if you're being more empathetic in your workspace, you'll find that you'll be able to connect better with colleagues and therefore be able to bring that empathy into the work. I mean, I preach that every day. It's like, again, it's, when I look at myself, I'm like, all the things that make me me are why my work is outstanding, because I'm able to bring my full self into situations. I think about, like the example I just used, I'm a single mom who is also a widow, who has great girlfriends who like to be out and about, a little turn up on a Friday night. I work out, so I'm into my fitness. Right. I want to put healthy foods in my body. I want to, I want my child to be healthy. I encourage her to eat healthy foods, but I also spoil her with sweets because sometimes I have mom guilt when I'm not around. And therefore, when she asks me for the extra piece of cake, I'm like, sure, honey, go ahead. Right. All of these things and all this rationale drive my decision-making every day. They drive the reasons why I use certain products. They drive the decisions why I engage with certain brands online, etc. So to me, again, there are ways that we are, we are included, that we can include ourselves in the communications, which will just make the work better. You don't necessarily have to be a single parent to understand what I'm talking about when I say my time is limited, right? You don't need to have children in order to understand when I feel guilty about not spending enough time with my child, right? There's probably somebody in your life that you feel bad about not spending enough time with, and you always say, oh gosh, I've got to make that call, or I got to, get over to their house, or I got to make that dinner plan. Well, let's put more of that empathy into the work that we do. Let's consider that other people feel the way that we feel, and therefore we will be better marketers and better business people for that.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it. I love how you said we as people have to be more empathetic. And my next question, I think you kind of answered that. You said, why? My question is, why does that emotional human connection work? Well, you said when you're included, you feel better. And I'm just thinking, when you show empathy to someone, you gain their trust. And trusted brands ultimately are more successful. And you also said that people choose you because they like you better. So empathy is really important in marketing. So is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. Yes, I say it all the time. People don't make choices on brands because of math. They make choices on brands because of their heart. It's like when a new iPhone launches every September, or now every September, it used to be every 2 years, but after I worked at Apple, it's every year.
Right.
And you find people arguing on Facebook about iPhone versus Android. That's not math. They're making arguments based on emotional connections. Somebody thinks the iPhone is cooler. It's not math. I've been on the inside. I can tell you for sure it's not math.
Right. You've been there.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, for sure. And so what you're playing on is how people are going to feel when they use your product. It's like, does somebody feel cooler because when they hold up their phone, there's that apple on the back of the phone? Does it say something about them? When somebody puts on a pair of Nikes or wears a Nike t-shirt to the grocery store, do they feel like they're an athlete, or feel like they're cooler and more fit, even though they're just sitting at home watching TV and eating nachos? There's emotion there, why you would choose Nike over Adidas.
Right, and that's where that emotional human connection again comes in that I think we all need to pay attention to. I think in all marketing you see this a lot, and in hospital marketing you see banners on websites that say, we're number one in this, and there's really no emotional human connection. You're bragging about yourself. You're not saying anything about the person you're trying to reach. That emotional human connection is missing.
That is absolutely correct. It drives me completely crazy when I see that. The funny thing is, I made the joke about, being a marketing nerd. I literally, I cannot look at anything without judging it.
Right.
And it completely drives me insane when I see that kind of banner advertising, especially in digital, sometimes on billboards and whatnot, or TV advertising. I'm like, where is the human touch? It's like we're talking about health and wellness in a way that is extraordinarily personal. We're not talking about phones and, my music selection or a car. I'm talking about like my ability to be healthy and to participate in my life. And if you are going to tell me that you can do it better than the other person, I need you to talk to my emotion. I need you to connect to me as a person, the reasons why I want to be healthy. Not that you're number one in somebody's rule book. Why is it that I want to be healthy? Because I want to be here for my daughter. Because I want to celebrate her 50th birthday. Because I want to be able to run a marathon. Or hell, I just want to get up the stairs without wheezing. Like there are reasons why we want to be healthy. And so if we as a marketing community, especially within the health industry, medical industry, can play to people's emotion and their rationale for why they want to do things in their lives, then we'll have a better chance of making them feel at home within our corporations and our environments over somebody else.
So true. And you just had a great quote, talk to my emotion. So I want all attendees to tweet that out right now. Give Boz credit, hashtag SHSMD. Talk to my emotion. I love that. That's such a great quote, and it's easy to remember, and that's what we're talking about here. Talk to my emotion. That is a great quote, Boz. I love that. So that's the perfect segue. You were just saying, things that drive you crazy. So let's get into what would Boz do? I feel like we're on a game show. Ta-da! What would Boz do? So if you were in charge of marketing at a hospital, and I know that you did want to be a doctor at one point, in fact, one time an obstetrician, so you do kind of have health care in your blood a little bit. I think you would have made a great obstetrician, by the way. Come on, are you kidding me? You would have been great. So if you were in charge of if you were in charge of marketing at a hospital, what's the first thing you would do? First day, what do you do?
Ooh, gosh, day one. Okay, let me think about this. Now, because I also love, pop culture, and I love all of the intricacies of what drives people to make decisions or drives people to, like we've been saying, like one thing over another, I would first want to assess the community in which I'm serving. Right?
Okay.
Not just in terms of demographic, but psychographic.
Okay.
Who are the people who are in the community? What is it that they are driven to do? Are they mostly an immigrant community? Are they, are they concerned about not their own health, but their children's health? Are they considered about elder care? What are the things that are really driving them? The funny thing is that, and I'm sure everyone on this call already knows this, and it's probably not something I need to say, but I will say it just to underline the point, that I believe that most people are more concerned about their loved ones' health than they are about than their own. And so we are, and they are more active about their loved ones' health than their own. And so if I am in charge of marketing at a hospital, I am absolutely understanding the psychographics of the community that I'm serving, first. Secondly, I am interested in understanding what their motivations are for whom they are in charge of, whose health are they in charge of, and speak to that. And I would absolutely draw on the emotion, so again, looking at why is it that I want to live a healthy life? What are the things, the reasons, the things about life that are so wonderful that make me want to be here? Because that is what is going to motivate me to take care of myself, or take care of my mother, or take care of my daughter, or take care of my husband, or take care of whomever it is that I care about. Because we have to switch the focus again from being about the numbers and about, the medicine to the emotion of why I want to be healthy and what is driving me. What is making me want to get up and go every day without my knees creaking, or what is it that I am motivated by in my community? So that if it is a lower income community and I'm concerned about where I invest my money for my health care, or whether or not I'll be able to get out of the appointment or the urgent care quickly so that I can get to my job, because if I can't get to my job on time, I'm going to lose it, and therefore I can't spend a lot of time, then the communication needs to lead with that. It's not so much number one for outpatient care, but perhaps it's literally time. My billboard is now time. That like you can get seen within 8 minutes, whatever the thing is, right? Because we know that what is driving that community is the fact that you have working class people who don't have time to just, call in a sick day. They're going to have to fit in this appointment or this schedule within their working schedule, and they don't have time to be late.
Right. I love that. So those are some really great steps for anyone listening right now. Assess the community. That's what you would do first. What are they driven to do? What are they concerned with? Number two, you said, What are their motivations for health? Whose health are they in charge of? Why do they want to be healthy? Because they're taking care of their child, their mom, their husband, etc. And you had another tweetable quote there. Here we go, number 2 of this webinar. It's not about the medicine, it's about the emotion. It's another one. Say, everybody tweet that out, give Bose credit, #ShishMed. Okay, so that is really great, and again, you're providing a great roadmap for us. So let me ask you this. So we're in the hospital, and this plays right into that, assessing the community I am serving. At a hospital, we may be charged with marketing different service lines, such as orthopedics or cardiovascular or cancer or women's health. Should we look at each of those individual service lines as their own individual brands?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, this is not a one-size-fits-all. I do believe in nuanced marketing. I don't believe in mass marketing. And I do believe in nuanced marketing because if I can solve a challenge for one area, it will halo to other areas to let them know that I do have specialty in that. It's kind of like, I love analogies, so you got to excuse me as I use them a lot. It's like if you have a friend who cooks really well, right? And they make the best lasagna that you've ever had. You are more apt to try their meatballs, right? Because they can cook. They can really throw down on the lasagna. So you will try their meatballs. It's the same thing. It's like if I know that you're really excellent in this area, I am more apt to believe that you're also excellent in this other area. And so there's less convincing that you have to do to make me believe that you have expertise across the continuum. I would also like to say that, when we look at these different specialties, it is like looking at the portfolio company, right? It's like when I was, at PepsiCo, yes, there's Pepsi, there's Diet Pepsi, there is Cherry Pepsi, all of these are different taste profiles. Sure. Now, they have the same umbrella brand, but they're different taste profiles. And maybe somebody who drinks Cherry Pepsi is not going to drink Diet, but they are within the same profile. So although I'm talking about Pepsi as an overarching brand, I do have to address the individual brands in their own way in order to make sure that the people who really like cherry are going to come for the cherry. But because they know that we make a good Pepsi, they are more apt to try Cherry Pepsi than they would Cherry Coke.
Got it. I love that, and I think that's really a good lesson for all of us. So speaking of that, you were just talking about brands. Let me segue into this. If you were to draw lessons then from pop culture, how would you incorporate them into your brand? So again, that's the perfect segue, as you were just talking about Pepsi and the different brands underneath, and big brands like that do have an effect on pop culture. How do we draw lessons from pop culture and apply them to our brands?
Yeah. What's funny is I feel like people think pop culture means that, like, whatever the trend is, like something that's happening that's like, I've got to stay on top of the coolest clothes or the hottest music. That's pop culture too. But pop culture means a lot of things. Pop culture can be, just time period, time of year. And that's another thing that drives me completely crazy. Is that, like, sometimes marketers are just oblivious to what's happening in the world. And I'm not talking about whether or not what song Cardi B is singing today, but it's like it is the holidays. What are people concerned about during the holidays? Are they more anxious? Yes, they are. Is that going to drive up any kind of panic attacks, blood pressure? Am I overindulging on food? Like, what are the things that are going to cause stress for me? I often think of the tangent solutions also that we can create as marketers that are aside of the big business that we're running, right? So for instance, if you feel that in your community there are a lot of people who may be, again, concerned about the holidays, there's a lot of stress, people are, short on time, they're trying to achieve so many things, and you are not sure that, of course, it's, you're running a big medical practice and there are, there are services that you provide perhaps there is an additional service that could be given that would attract people to your brand to help you trust, i.e., let's just take social media. Pretend you have, a social media account as associated with the hospital or the medical center.
Yep.
And every day you're now setting up a routine where at 5:30 Eastern time, you have a breathing meditation to help people overcome their anxiety, right? Join us at 5:30 a.m. Pacific time. We'll do it again at, we'll cross the United States of America or globally, you know. And at 5:30 in every time zone, we're going to come back with the guided breathing meditation to help lessen your anxiety so that you can go into the day feeling great. Now, that is not necessarily prescribed medicine. It is not, although there is arguments about whether or not that is medicine, but that's another conversation. But is there something that you can do as a marketer to draw people in, to get them to trust you, to affect their daily life in a way that is relevant? And that's what pop culture really means, relevance, timely relevance. And so again, it's not just about, the song that, the hit maker has made that you need to know to incorporate into your advertising. That's not it. It works for some people. It doesn't work for everybody. But is there a time period? Is there a moment that is happening that you could provide an additional way of engaging your audience to make them trust you more? And if you can do that and figure out ways to engage them, then I guarantee that they will think about your brand when their crisis comes.
Right. Great term, timely relevance, and we should all remember that. And I also liked how you talked about tangent solutions, asking yourself what are the additional services you can provide, and a great suggestion about social media and meditation every day at 5:30. And earlier you said you were a fan of nuanced marketing, and that if you show excellence in one area, that leads people to think you're excellent in another area. Well, by doing something like that, providing that additional service to somebody may lead them to go, that was really cool what they did. So again, and you said the word trust. Boy, that was really cool. I like them. I trust them. Maybe I'll use them for this, or maybe I will book that appointment for whatever it is now. So that all kind of snowballs and leads into it, I think, which is really cool. Okay, so let's keep moving. So let's move. So that was what would Boz do? Now we're moving into insights and lessons Boz has learned. I feel like, again, this is part 2 of our game show. So let's move into that. What's the biggest lesson you've learned throughout your career?
Ooh, the biggest lesson. It's interesting that I think people assume that I am hitting home runs and that is all I do. I like to think that. I like to think that everything I do is like I'm Midas and everything is gold. It is not. But what I have learned, the biggest lesson along the way, first in risk-taking, meaning that I'm going to try things. I'm going to try a lot of things. But the key is not just in trying a lot of things and taking big risks, but learning to fail fast. And I think you've probably heard that before. Somebody's probably said it before. You've heard it. But it is a true practice, in learning how to assess when something is not working and to get out and then do something else, to iterate. It doesn't mean that you throw the whole thing away. It may just be a little evolution, a little tweak. Maybe change the language a little bit to see if it engages people more, or maybe try a new method, of the idea so that you can, again, continue to engage. But understanding what is working and understanding what is not working. The not working is probably the most important fact. That if it is not working, how do you identify that? And how do you get out quickly? That is the biggest lesson. And so to me, it's like, I'm hitting, but that's because my average is really high. I'm putting a lot of things in the world and then seeing what is working. Yeah.
Right. Learning to fail fast and taking risks is what you said. I think sometimes, again, across all businesses or companies, I think people are reticent to do that because they don't want to fail or do something that doesn't work in front of their boss, and they go, yeah, you must not be a very good marketing director. That didn't work. So kind of climbing that mountain so the people you work for understand that, hey, I'm going to take some risks here. I'm going to try some new things. They're not all going to work. As you said, I don't always hit home runs, but to me, Boz, you always hit home runs. You're our cleanup hitter. You're always hitting home runs to me. But I think that's really an important point. So how would you Bozify marketing? And let me add on to that, to what we were just talking about. If you work for somebody that may not allow you to take a lot of risks, how can you talk to that person and get that person to understand, hey, we need to take some risks, and if it doesn't work, we're going to fail fast, but eventually we're going to hit on something really exceptional.
Yeah. Ooh, this is a really good question. So here is the secret.
I want it.
The thing that
give it to me now.
The thing that I feel, I know, right? I'm like, ooh. The thing that I feel has really set me apart in terms of my work and essentially how I've been able to succeed, which is that I am a friend maker. That is my secret. I'm a friend maker. I make fans and I make friends in everything and everywhere that I am. It feels sometimes like I'm on a solo mission when I have ideas that are a little risky or a little too out there for my colleagues and for my boss, for sure. But I will do my best to get as many fans to get on board with my idea and therefore do the talking for me and get the excitement going on my behalf that those ideas then will work. That is how I Bozify everything in my life, in all of my business dealings. It is that I galvanize my people to move on my behalf. And so if there's anything that you are interested in, that you're excited about, risks that you want to take, the exciting moments that you're thinking about and new ideas, you have to get fans. You have to get friends. And your colleagues are those people. Your colleagues are those people. And sometimes it's your boss, for sure, But I would say that there are many times in which I have thought about, risky ideas, or I want to try something new, and I know that my boss or maybe my colleagues aren't going to like it. First of all, I'm going to be super transparent. It's gonna. Right. I'm going to present it as in, listen, this is risky. I recognize that, because the last thing you want is somebody who is, again, I'm going to use another analogy. I feel better when I'm on a flight if there is turbulence and the pilot comes on and says, hey, hello, everyone. We're going through a little bit of turbulence right now. I know that you can feel it, but it's okay because we can see the weather pattern ahead. It's going to be another 7 minutes or so. We're going to try and move out of this, but if we don't, just know that it will end in about 7 minutes and we'll be fine.
Right.
That makes me feel a whole lot better.
Me too.
I'm just sitting there and it feels like an eternity, and I'm seeing the flight attendants run around and they're securing things and I'm like, oh Lord, are we going down? Like, what's happening?
Right.
And so risk is like that, think of it as like, you are the pilot of your idea, and the turbulence is all of the factors in the world that are going to make the idea sort of go up and down and cause other people to feel really uncomfortable. It could be your boss, it could be your colleagues, or anybody like that. If you are transparent about your process, about what's going on, what you plan to do if this idea doesn't work, you will find that people will be much more willing to sit in their seats calmly with their seatbelt on and go along the ride with you than if you don't.
Right. So there's another one for us. You are the pilot of your idea. I love that. You are the pilot of your idea. Reassure them and make them comfortable that you got this. That is so good. And I also love how you said, I am a friend maker. I don't know if I've ever heard any business person, marketing person say that. I am a friend. You're a first. See that? You are a home run hitter. Come on now. Look at that. You're just hitting them out of the park here. Going crazy. I love it. So that is really, really good. So we were earlier talking about pop culture and things. So when it comes to retail, is there a lesson that we can learn from retail at all that people are doing in the retail industry, risks that they're taking, and we can watch the risks that they're taking and apply to our businesses? What do you think about that?
Yes. Well, certainly there are so many lessons from retail. And I would even say, take it even a step further from just retail into event management, because what happens in retail and events is that you were worried about the number of people who are going to come through the door, right? If you're managing an event, you're worried about ticket sales. If you're managing retail space, you are worried about the footprint, right, of people. Sorry, I think you can't hear me. Can you hear me? No? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
I think we got you back. We got you back.
Back on. Just as I was going, I was right in there.
You were in there.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
so
we're
I was
talking
saying
about lessons from retail. Yeah.
Yes, lessons from retail. So, because retail, and I also added event management as one of those things, festivals and events. I mean, it's sort of the business I'm in now. Because you want foot traffic. You want people to come into the doors, whether that's at an event or in retail, and you want them to choose you because they can choose so many different things. And for me, I think one of the biggest lessons about retail is, again, that, the service of what you are going to get when I come into your space is one of the biggest challenges that we have, right? And that is a lot of work because that is not just marketing driven. Although there are a lot of things that you can use in marketing in order to make people feel like the service is going to be exceptional, or that the service is exceptional. i.e., if you have challenges with time, maybe you don't have enough staff to cover the floor, and this is a big, retail issue. What you're trying to do is engage people in a way that will allow them to get the answers for themselves, right? So that's signage challenges.
Okay.
And also to be able to engage them while they are waiting for whatever, activity is next, whether they're waiting in line or they're waiting to see somebody. There are activities that we can create to engage them. And because we live in such a digital and social world, it is now much easier to figure out ways to engage our audiences while they are in this wait versus in the past where you had to print out, hard copies. And so in this case, I absolutely rely on digital and social. So our websites, our social channels are really indicative of how our customers and our consumers will be able to interact with our brands if we are programming that correctly. Are there ways in which we can direct our audiences to our retail environments through digital and social to make them more sticky? If you are able to get people to engage on that platform, you'll find that they are much more willing to then wait the extra 5 minutes or 10 minutes to get their service than if you didn't. And so again, perhaps even in this type of health environment or in hospitals, what then we are talking about is, when somebody walks in, are they seeing signage that directs them to the website to take a survey? We don't want to self-diagnose because that's WebMD and we know that that's just a disaster. But are there ways in which to engage them in a way that's going to make them feel better? Again, I think we get to empathy, and what happens when someone comes into a hospital environment. I always go to the thought about anxiety. From my own personal life, I've had quite some tragic situations in which, I had to be in a hospital environment, and the worst thing is not being the patient, but being the support person. Are there ways in which we can give people tips and tricks to essentially not just make themselves better, but again, the person that they are responsible for? Are there some lessons in there that we could provide on things to say, what to ask? Again, breathing techniques to calm the hell down. all of the things. It's like, just put yourself in the situation. If you're coming into the environment and you need care, and maybe you're not the patient, maybe we are targeting the people who are not the patient, the family,
Right.
Or the main caregiver, to be the one that we are engaging. That could be very helpful. So, but
Right.
those are also all things from retail, right? Ways that you get people.
Yeah.
This is why retailers send out coupons, ahead of time to interest people in coming into the store to be able to purchase, because you saw that thing that you really wanted, and now it's off $1, and so you're going to come in.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. And for everyone, every attendee, I think this makes total sense, being in the healthcare space. And we were talking about empathy, putting yourself in the shoes of those people and trying to go understand what they're feeling. And you just said engage them while they're waiting. Well, think about the journey someone going to a healthcare institution has to go through. They have to make the appointment. Well, they're waiting from the time they make the appointment to the visit. How can you reach out to them in that time period? They get to the doctor's office. They're waiting to see the doctor. How can you engage them while they're in the waiting room? After they see the doctor, they're waiting for the test results. How can you engage with them in that time frame? So what you said there are just great examples and great opportunities for all of us to engage with our potential consumer while they're waiting. So I think that just makes a ton of sense.
And if I can add just one more thing, I mean, this is part of when we think about digital and social, sometimes we think email is such a pain, because who reads the email? We get too many emails anyway. But even, a simple suggestion, again, just using focus group of one, right? You think about yourself and what you like how you like to be engaged. It's when I get my reminder about my appointment in that email, what else could we include in that email that would make me feel good? Make me feel like I trust you. Make me feel like you care about me as a person. Are there the top 5 questions that you should ask your doctor when you get in? Or here are some things that you should bring with you when you come. Or, are you feeling anxious before your appointment?
Right.
Here are some thoughts about what to do in preparation. Things that just human. Just become more human to help us to address our consumers and our audiences in a way that's going to make them feel like I'm going to see my girlfriend. My homegirl is the one who's going to treat me, and how would I feel if I was going to go see her instead of somebody who I might, quite frankly, be afraid of.
Right. Again, back to the pilot analogy, which was great. Reassure them and make them comfortable. That makes so much sense. Well, Boz, this has been so great. I could talk to you for another hour at least, but I do want to leave some room for questions. So thank you so much. It's been so wonderful to talk with you. I'm going to turn this back over to Stephanie now, because I do know we do have some questions for you.
Okay.
And I welcome everyone to continue typing your questions into the Q&A pod. Up first, we have a question from both Heather and Lori on the empathy connection. So they think that it works really well with consumer brands and retail, but when you're talking about B2B brands, the decision isn't always emotional. Is there a place for empathy in B2B communication?
Absolutely. What's so interesting to me is that we think of B2B as, again, inanimate, and that companies you're talking to a company. But no, we're not. We're talking to people within the company. We're talking to people who are going to make people decisions. And I would challenge that, again, we think about what is their motivation. What is the thing that is outside of their bottom line that they are interested in? Because, quite frankly, there are competitors who are going to be able to sell them maybe a very similar package to what you're trying to sell. And so if you can appeal to their human side and their empathy and their emotional connection, I'm pretty certain that you'll be able to have that leg up. And at the end of the day, we are talking to people. We keep thinking that we're talking to businesses, and we're not. There are people inside of those businesses that are making the decisions. So what is it that is driving their decision making? It's not just the bottom line. None of us operate that way. There's literally no one on the planet who operates purely from a bottom line P&L standpoint. And so you have to figure that out.
Great, thank you. The next question is also on that empathy. Which healthcare brands do you think leverage the human emotional connection well? if any?
That's a very good question. I think some of the big ones. I mean, it's interesting. In my own community, I started seeing some really great advertising from Kaiser Permanente, which I had never seen the kind of communication that I saw from them. It really started. I mean, listen, I think they still have a ways to go. So my apologies to anybody who's on this call from there. But I do think that there is a way, like I said, to talk to human beings in a way that is personally connected. I just want to underline the point that even though we're talking about mass audiences and we're talking about huge swath of people, that it is possible to get into the nuance of conversation in order to really attach yourself to somebody's emotional driver. That it's not necessarily just about my own experience, but knowing that you feel something. I mean, we're talking about even just colloquially. What is the language that is being used in advertising or in communications? One of the scariest things when we talk about medical profession and especially, as we talk about healthcare is lingo. People they don't feel smart, right? They feel intimidated by the language that is used within the medical profession. And so is there a way to make it more colloquial so that, again, I feel like I'm not going to walk into a place that is intimidating, that is going to be outside of my comfort zone. There are already so many, things that I'm fearful of. And so if I feel like I could communicate with you in a way that I would communicate with my sister, then I will be more inclined to come to your business.
Great, thank you. And moving back to the brand conversation, what are some ways that you can assess your community?
Well, okay, so this is a good one because, oftentimes we think of our community as like the strangers who are out in the wild and we don't know who they are. But I'm sure that you probably live inside of your community. Most of us live somewhere in the neighborhood of our work environment. And so I would start with, first of all, the people who work at the hospital or at the medical center. I would do a qualitative survey with them to understand what their motivations are, what they're interested in, who are they, what do they do, what are their concerns. And then if there is budget and you are able to do a wider swath, then I would absolutely pull from the community to do a larger qualitative survey. I mean, there are companies who do that kind of work, but it is quite easy to even pull from your own records to find people within the community who have already been served, or maybe who haven't been served in a long time, to go further with questions that would enable you to better understand their motivation. And so if there isn't budget, I would absolutely start with those who are closest within the circle of the hospital or the center. And if there is budget, then I would go outside of that to begin a qualitative study.
Fantastic, thanks. And we have a two-part question from Alan. How do we determine the right balance of brand building or promotion versus more direct marketing? And have you ever had challenges on convincing company leaders of the value of brand building?
Oh, yes. Okay, so I'll answer the second part first. Yeah, I mean, brand building is the hardest part of any marketing strategy, because direct to consumer or CRM, you can see the results immediately, right? You can say, okay, I sent out 30 hard copies and we got back, 15 people who made appointments or whatever. That's probably a very high percentage, but whatever. The point is you can make a direct line. Brand marketing is more difficult because we're talking about the influence of influence. The thing that caused me to look at this institution in a different way and then decide that I was going to participate with them. And I can't draw it back to that colloquial message I saw on Instagram, right? It is a much more difficult thing. However, I believe that there are ways to get to this this pattern of a mix that will allow for leadership to understand the value of brand marketing. What I would recommend is that first of all, it's always a mix, right? It's never 100% one way or another. And so there has to be a rational mix between brand and direct marketing, which will allow for the continuation of, the brand message. First of all, there needs to be, like I said, some good qualitative measures to be able to understand who the community is, what they're trying to achieve, etc. Once you have an understanding of that, being able to diagnose and therefore talk to the senior leadership about why it is that you need to address the empathy or the feelings of people is much easier, because then you have real proof. You say, okay, people are feeling this. And therefore, in order for us to achieve that, we need to change or we need to evolve our brand to better address those issues. And so it is a much easier conversation once you have data. It is very difficult to say, hey, we need more investment in brand marketing without any proof that you need to evolve the brand, and how are you going to do that? And again, it's back to the pilot example, where it's like, hey, listen, we're going to try this. I want to try this. And we are going to give it a period of 6 months. We're going to use all of our measures to understand whether or not it's working. And if it is not working, then we're going to go back to this thing, or we're going to try a different course of action. It is much better to be able to create a strategic plan which has a mix of the brand marketing in addition to direct marketing in order to get the results that we want. You know what? I'm sorry. I forgot the first part of that question.
And how do you just determine the right balance between brand building and direct marketing?
Okay, yes. Well, I mean, again, this is where it's not a formula. It will be determined by, your own brand health and your own environment. It is the magic that we create. What will work for one brand won't work for another brand. And so to me, again, it's partly, starting off with the understanding of who the community is and what they feel and what they need from you, what they think about your brand in general, and then creating the plan to address that issue. If people aren't coming in and they're not coming in, why? What is holding them back? Well, if you don't know why they're not coming, then you cannot address it from a brand standpoint, and therefore all your direct messaging and all your direct mail and everything else will fall flat because you would not have addressed the reasons why they are not attending, or not walking in the door. And so that is a mix of brand and direct that will make sense to any senior leader once you present it with the data and the facts.
All right, great. And just to wrap up this portion, in 10 seconds or less, to what do you credit your impressive success?
Oh, gosh. That is, that's a hard one. I guess maybe my endless curiosity about human beings. I'm fascinated by us, and I want to get to know us better, and I want to talk to us all the time. So endless curiosity. Never stop asking why.
Awesome. So thank you to Rose Glenn, to Bill Klaproth, and of course to Bozoma St. John for your participation today, and thanks to everybody else for joining the webinar. A copy of the webinar will be available and shared later today. Registration is open now for these upcoming events, and for more information, head to shsmd.org/education, and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. And lastly, SHSMD would like to wish you all a happy holiday season and Happy New Year. Thank you so much, Boz.
Thank you. So appreciate it.